right, Unit 2, Topic 5, we're going to be talking about the demographic transition model. So here we go. Your objective is to be able to explain theories of population growth and decline. We already talked about a couple of these theories with Boserup and Malthus. So those are theories that explain population growth and decline. We're going to look at a couple of more things that help us to be able to explain that. So let's look back on what we've talked about for the last couple of days, or the last few days. We know that population is affected by fertility, mortality, and migration, and that we can see those changes when a population is illustrated by a population pyramid. But what we don't know is what shapes the political, culture, social, and economic factors that influence fertility, mortality, and migration. So we know that fertility, mortality, and migration are affected by political, cultural, social, and economic factors, but we don't know right now what determines those factors. Well, I'm going to tell you. Changes in birth rate, death rate, and migration are shaped by how a country changes from agrarian to industrial. This is called industrialization, and it occurs when a country's economy goes from agriculturally based to industry based. And that happens through industrialization. It happened in America, the late 1800s, early 1900s with the Industrial Revolution. And that's the thing, it happens for countries at different times. It doesn't all happen at the same time. And so this man did a wonderful job in the early 90s, and he created what is called the demographic transition model to help us kind of categorize countries based on their development. I'm trying to move myself out of the way here. Sometimes it doesn't like, I don't know. Oh, here we go. I guess I can go over here. I guess this is the best place for me. Okay. The demographic transition model shows 5 typical stages of population change that countries pass through as they modernize. What I want you to notice is this word typical. This isn't an exact science. Some countries you may kind of toss up in the air and be like, well, I feel like it could be in this stage or this stage because maybe they're transitioning from one stage to another, and that is okay. But these are just typical stages of population change as countries modernize and industrialize. So stage 1 is characterized by a high birth rate, which is this purple line, and a high death rate. And so their population is generally stable, pretty low, and its rate of natural increase is slowly increasing. There's not like a big increase if there is one at all. There's not really like any countries that are still in stage 1. There are a few like remote groups of people, but not really like full countries that are still in stage 1. Stage 2 is the early expanding stage. So here, the birth rate is still very high, but the death rate begins a dramatic fall, which makes the rate of natural increase increase rapidly, because the birth rate is still about the same as it was in stage 1, but the death rate is extremely lower. And so the population, the rate of natural increase soars. There are a few developing countries that are in stage 2. Here are some examples. These aren't the only ones. I have a couple of more right here that I can tell you about if you want to write it down. I just got to find it real fast. Oh, yeah, right here. Mali is in there, and also South Sudan would be an example of a country in stage 2. Stage 3 is the late expanding stage. So here, the birth rate begins to fall, and the death rate is still falling, but it's not falling as rapidly. And so the increase of population begins to slow down. The rate of natural increase is still positive. We're still going in an increasing direction, but it does slow down. This gives you the example of Brazil. Also, Mexico is in stage 3, Turkey and Indonesia are all countries that could be considered in stage 3. The death rate falls pretty low in stage 3 because of improved medical care and a better diet. And the country's beginning to industrialize more, so there's less need for children to work. So that is stage 3. Stage 4 is where most of your developed countries are. So stage 4 is low stationary. The birth rate gets very low, and the death rate is still low. And so the population is usually stable or slowly increasing because of migration or something like that. But this is where most of your developed countries are: the United States, China, France, the UK. This chart has Japan as an example. I don't exactly know when this chart was created, but this model was created in like the early 90s. Well, in the late 90s, a few countries started like getting out of stage 4 and actually moving into a different stage. And so they added a stage 5 to the demographic transition model. And I'm telling you this in relation to Japan because a lot of demographic transition models now would characterize Japan as in stage 5, along with Germany and maybe even Italy. But there's a lot of question marks in stage 5 just because there aren't very many countries in it. And honestly, it hasn't even really been a thing for that long. But stage 5 can be characterized by a very low birth rate. So the birth rate actually starts falling below the death rate. Even though the death rate is low, the birth rate becomes even lower than the death rate. And so the population actually starts slowly decreasing. And this doesn't mean like just, 1 year they didn't have as many kids. It takes a few years to start seeing the trend, especially on a population pyramid. And so it's characterized by a slow decrease. And again, there aren't very many countries in stage 5. We don't really know a whole lot about it. But there are a few countries that have kind of gotten out of stage 4, not in a good way, in a more negative way, and their population has actually started to decrease because the death rate or the birth rate has fallen below the death rate. You need to know this chart. You need to be able to know the characteristics of each stage. And not just looking at the chart, you need to be able to like read about a country and understand, okay, I see this is their birth rate, this is their death rate. This is kind of what's happening. Culturally, I feel like they're in this stage. So you need to study this. I'm going to post this document in Google Classroom so that you don't have to keep trying to go to this video to study it. But you also need to be able to match these stages to population pyramids. You need to be able to look at a population pyramid and analyze it, and then determine which stage it would fall in based on the characteristics of the population pyramid. The next model we're going to look at kind of goes with the demographic transition model. So the way I like to describe this is that they are two different models, but the demographic transition model can exist without the epidemiological transition model, but the epidemiological transition model would not exist if the demographic transition model didn't exist. So as can be seen on the demographic transition model, as a society develops, their death rates change. That was one of the things that I mentioned every time I was going through one of these stages was the death rate. So that is something that happens as countries move through the demographic transition model. The epidemiological transition model, though, explains the causes of the changing death rates as the countries develop. The states of the stages is what that's supposed to be. I'm sorry. The stages of the epidemiological transition model correspond with the stages of the demographic transition model. So these are the stages of the epidemiological transition model. I'll move my face out of the way when we get to number 5. I don't have anywhere else to put it. So stage 1. So stage 1 of the epidemiological transition model corresponds with stage 1 of the demographic transition model. So when a country is in stage 1 of the demographic transition model, they're also in stage 1 of the epidemiological transition model. And this stage, the death rates are usually characterized by pestilence and famine. So countries in stage 1 are dying because of parasitic or infectious diseases, accidents, animal attacks, or human conflicts. And the effect that has on the population is a high death rate and a low life expectancy. Remember, there aren't really any countries that are characterized by this anymore, just random groups or tribes. Stage 2. So when a country is in the early expanding stage of the DTM, they are concerned with receding pandemics of the epidemiological transition model. So countries in stage 2, they're dying because of pandemics, which I feel like you know what that is by now, but a pandemic is a widespread disease that affects large populations. So when a country is in stage 2, there are lots of pandemics that they're worried about. Um, um, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. I'm so sorry, it's been a long day. When the country enters stage 2, they're less worried about pandemics because they have improved sanitation, nutrition, and medicine. So you have a decreasing death rate with an increasing life expectancy. When a country moves into stage 3, they are now more concerned with degenerative and human-created diseases. So they're not so much concerned with these infectious diseases anymore, because usually countries in stage 3 now have access to antibiotics and medicines and things like that. But they are concerned with health conditions that affect aging populations, like heart disease, which is like a heart attack, and cancer, because people are living longer now. And so these kind of things are what is killing people. I can't tell you for the last how many years the number one killer in the United States has been a heart attack, especially for males. So, and that's just because, people begin living longer. So the death rate stabilizes at a low level and life expectancy even continues to increase. When a country is in stage 4, remember this is where the United States is if you want to use that as a reference. Stage 4 is an extension of stage 3, so they're pretty close. But the age-related diseases are put off as medical procedures delay the onset of these diseases through advanced procedures. Diseases such as Alzheimer's and dementia increase because life expectancy reaches a peak. So again, stage 4 is just an extension of stage 3, which means countries in stage 4 are still characterized by these degenerative diseases. However, they're just put off because we have the ability to perform surgeries or have advanced medical technology, not just medicine. So that is stage 4. Stage 5, so stage 4 is like the best a country can get, basically, because stage 5, if I can move myself out of the way again, stage 5 is the re-emerging of infectious and parasitic diseases. So if a country ends up into stage 5, of the demographic transition model, they, according to the epidemiologic transition model, are concerned again with infectious and parasitic diseases. Infectious and parasitic diseases increase as some bacteria and parasites become resistant to antibiotics and vaccine. And so life expectancy begins to decrease once again. So the biggest thing that you need to get from the epidemiological transition model is simply that it corresponds with the demographic transition model, and that each one of these stages characterizes the death rate of a country depending on how developed that country is, on how developed their medical technology is, and things like that. I think that's it. Oh, no, one more little picture. This is just the epidemiological transition model stages on the demographic transition model so that you can kind of see it that way. I'll post this document too, along with this chart so that you all can study those together. So make sure that whenever you're looking over this, guys, that you don't just say, okay, I know what these things are, but that you can apply them, that you can look at population trends, population pyramids, and be able to categorize them and see how developed that country is simply by looking at population statistics. I know that was kind of a lot in a little bit of slides. I don't want you to be overwhelmed. So if you have some questions, email me or schedule a meeting with me. Let's talk about it. You can also, in the textbook that's posted in Google Classroom, if you want to kind of add to your notes or see if you can get something that I did not say, you can look at pages 61 through 66. And I know that sounds a lot, but there's a lot of pictures and stuff, so it's really not that much if you want to do a little bit of extra reading and expand upon what we just talked about. That's up to you. It's not mandatory. Let me know if you have any questions.